And welcome back for another episode. So let's have a quick look at what's going on. First of all, we did get a decent bit of income this year, again from our trade deals, and we now are in the positive by quite a bit actually. In terms of colonies for this year, we've set up some plans, but we haven't actually colonized anything. We'll be expanding the colony in Brazil that we have quite a bit. And then we are gathering now resources from Goa and Delhi to Macau. Because Macau is probably going to be our best option in terms of expansion, especially towards like Japan and more along China coast and so forth. So that's going to be probably important hub. So we'll be gathering up some resources there just so that we can actually build, for example, a shipyard or something in here. And maybe increase the production. Of course, right now it doesn't have a lot of different resources yet. But we'll get that sorted out this year. And we'll have at least a bit of influx of resources. Eventually we'll probably start colonizing a bit more in South America, for example. And speaking of South America, our plans on raiding Buenos Aires is still in place. I mean, our fleets are more or less ready. I mean, I think we were waiting for some ships that can actually do the... Yeah, we don't have any of the vertical cannon controls yet, so we can't actually fire on the coastal defenses all that well, which is what we're basically waiting on. I believe we are actually doing something about that in Belém. We're building one of these that's going to take until April, and I believe... Actually, I'm not sure if it does have. I don't know. We may have actually sent up some... Or we might send up some ships from the North Atlantic, or rather the interception fleet. If I remember correctly, we might have something over here that is capable of... Yes, we do have two of them actually. So we could send one of these across Atlantic over there to aid in aiming our guns to the coastal fortifications, and that should then allow us to raid Buenos Aires and maybe at some point maybe even invade it if it's possible. Of course, we don't want to send too many ships away from Portugal itself, because it is a bit precarious situation. The capital of Spain is right over here, or the capital port, and right on the other side to the Bay of Biscay there's another one over here. So we are kind of sandwiched between the Spanish here right now, which isn't easy. But in terms of other fleet stuff, I mean, there's not going to be a huge amount of things. We'll be trying to bring in some of the survey vessels and such back home to undergo the yearly overhauls and such. We'll be preparing to do the raid in Buenos Aires, and that's probably going to be the highlight of this year, unless something else happens. But anyway, I'll bring you guys back in just a few moments. We have upgraded our research efficiency, and now we started focusing our efforts on getting the better gunpowder again. That should be done now sometime during the summer. And at the same time we started also getting a bit more effective construction rate research. That's going to take a while still, but we'll get it started at least. We constructed some financial centers in Lisbon, so we now started constructing 5 research facilities, which is going to increase our research speed quite nicely. And of course, we do have a fair bit of extra room here that we could use. Also, we got plenty of available workers, got over 100 million, so that's not going to be a problem in terms of employment either. Our intercept fleet has now been out for 9 months, so they'll be pulled back to Lisbon to refuel, resupply, and undergo some overhaul. At this point, it's very unlikely that the enemy is still sailing towards here. While possible, it's certainly been a long while, and they'd probably be already in here. We have completed the research on thicker armor, so now we'll have to redesign our ships. At least, well, actually probably all of them, and they will be pretty useful after the upgrades. Of course, that means that we do need to retool some of our shipyards yet again. At the same time, we are now focusing our research efforts on getting the better optics as well, and well, it's going to take a while before we actually get those. At least getting them sooner rather than later will be very useful, and upgrading the optics on a ship is relatively cheap compared to a lot of the other things. We have now completed another project regarding the optics. We do still need another tech that is currently under research before we can actually redesign our cross nests to be a bit more effective. Now we started researching the ground formation construction rate in Belém, which it's going to be done sometime next year, at least with the current rate. But that will allow us to then fortify our coastlines, for example, a little bit faster and train our troops a little bit quicker and so forth, so that's gonna be useful. Our 6th rate shipyard in Lisbon has now reached the required tonnage to be upgraded to 5th rate, and the 5th rate shipyard is currently working towards being a 4th rate and so forth. It's gonna take a while before we actually can utilize all that, but it's fine. We're now retooling the 6th rate to be producing the latest design of our 5th race that we have. We have also completed the research on better gunpowder, so we are now designing the next generation of gunpowder storage. We decided to make also a 30 capacity, which is going to be relatively size effective. Like, it's about the same size as what the old 20s were, like the initial 20s were, I think. I might be mistaken, maybe even smaller, but somewhere around there the size difference is. And since the faster we reload our guns, the more we need to have gunpowder, so it's probably going to be required at some point. And we are also researching the new sail technology. That's going to take a while. I mean, if we were not doing the gunpowder storage, we would be able to get that within the next year or so. But right now it's a little bit slower, but that should be alright for now. I mean, we are building more research facilities, and the next one is going to be done in about 6 months, I think. So we'll be able to speed up our research a tiny bit that way. But we do want to get the gunpowder storages upgraded. While we might not be putting them into our current ships, once we get the engine technology and all that, then we can do a next generation of ships which will be even faster, and they'll have even more room because of the gunpowder takes less and so forth. A Caribbean expedition fleet, which is actually not heading to Caribbean at all, has arrived in Rio de Janeiro. We've attached a ship that has a vertical gun controls to the fleet, just so that we'll be able to then fire upon the coastal defenses in Buenos Aires. We might actually switch some more ships from the garrison fleet here in Rio to that, just to make sure that we can destroy the coastal defenses as quickly as possible. We do also have 2 support vessels in there, which we will probably bring in fairly close to the colony itself, but then leave like beyond the gun range, just so that they'll be there. If we need to tow anything away, they'll be there. If we need to refuel anything, they'll be there in a matter of minutes. We are now approaching Buenos Aires, so we'll be detaching the tankers as well as the ship that we transferred across the Atlantic, because they have surpassed their deployment time quite a bit, so their morale is a bit low. So we'll let them stay back and defend the tankers, while the rest of the ships will attack the coastal fortifications. And so far we can see that there's not an enormous tonnage there, but we'll see how much that's actually going to be after we've destroyed the coastal fortifications. And actually, if we have a look at the terrain over there, it's prairie, so it's probably not masking them much, actually. But anyway, we'll detach the ships and then we'll move in and destroy the coastal fortifications. The enemy fortifications are on fire. We do still need to sail a little bit closer before we can open fire on them, but so far no hits. We had now opened fire on the fortification. Unfortunately, we did already take 7 hits, although they are very minor hits and we are not quite within range with all of our cannons, so we do need to sail a little bit closer. But at least we are now dealing some damage, and I believe we already destroyed one section of their cannons. The enemy has been focusing fire on our biggest ship. Already 3 of the layers have been penetrated on several locations. Luckily there's still 4 layers remaining, but we'll see if we can actually last with the ship until the end of the battle. Or do we need to pull it back, because that is also a possibility. Now, we've been also doing a fair bit of damage on the enemy fortifications, and we estimate that we destroyed probably about 20% of the strength of the fortification. Majority of the enemy guns have fallen silent, and majority of the fort is already in ruins. There's still a few guns firing upon our ships, but those should be dealt with very quickly, and after we deal with those, we'll probably head back towards Rio. We have completed another 2 third rates in Lisbon, and we've also redesigned our 6th rate to be a bit more up to date. It now has the high density duranium armor. It does have still the old gunpowder storage. We could technically upgrade that at some point, but I don't think it's necessary right now. It does have the increased deployment time. It has pretty good range, 44 billion, and it does have the sloop master. We will eventually get the better sloop master. That's probably going to be the, well, essentially the 3rd generation vessels at some point, but that's not a priority right now. I think right now it's just get our ship's yard to build these instead of the older ones. I mean, these are not that, there's not a huge difference in there, other than the fact that the armor takes a lot less space in these, and there's a few other things there that does give it a lot more longevity and all that, but all in all, other than the increased fire rate actually as well. Okay, so these are actually a fair bit better than the old designs. So this is what we want to upgrade our existing 6th race into as best as we can. Of course, there is a bit of a build cost increase there, about 50 points. It's going to take a while to refit all of this, but it should be alright. The fleet that was raiding in Buenos Aires is already heading back to Rio, and it's going to stay there for the time being, until we have any new tasks for it. We've completed research for better optics, so now we start redesigning our crow's nest, just so that we can see enemies a little bit further away. Of course, these will need to be added to the ships and all that, so it's not going to be immediately, but they should be researched relatively quickly. I mean, this is going to be done by the next build cycle, actually. The first one, and then the others are going to take a little bit longer, but not too much, I don't think. And there we have it, that's another year done, so let's have a quick look at what's going on. Currently we are building a fair bit of ships. Actually, we're not doing anything there, but we are retooling the shipyard. That's going to be done in February, so that's when we'll start using this shipyard again. We are doing a fair bit of building, actually. There's a lot of new ships, and then there's some of the smaller ships that are being refitted right now. There's not a huge amount of stuff there, but still it's decent. We're still updating some of the sizes here, and once we get the 4th rate shipyard added to Zhatelier, we'll start expanding that to become the new 3rd rate shipyard. We've been upgrading all of these shipyards slowly but surely, and that does give us a bit more capacity, but at the same time it's going to take a bit less time to upgrade one shipyard to the next one than upgrading, say, a shipyard from 0 to, well, technically it starts at 1000, but a completely new shipyard from scratch to, say, a 3rd rate, which is, it would take probably 10, maybe 15 years. So yeah, that's not a viable option right now, not in this war. Then of course in a few other places we are building a little bit ships, and we will be retooling some of the ships as well. I mean, for example, over here we are refitting ships there, and over here we're actually building new ones. But slowly but surely we will be expanding our fleet a little bit. We've done a decent bit of work on that already, and we'll be able to update some of our ship designs even further at some point. And since research, we are already working towards the next sail technology, which is going to be done sometime during next summer actually, and then we can start designing our new mast and so forth. We are of course updating our gunpowder storages. There's still 2 that we are currently researching. One of them is going to be done in February, and the other one is going to be done probably August or September, somewhere around there. And then we're getting the thermal sensor sensitivity during spring. We're updating all of our crown things, which is going to take a while. First we'll get this construction rate up, and then we'll essentially go through all of these, and it's going to take at least a year. So that's keeping that research quite busy. But we're also getting the construction rate here in Rio, but that's also going to take a better part of the year, so it's not going to have an effect right now. In terms of construction, we are getting some research facilities in Rio, and those of the other things are not particularly different from regular, although in Macau, do we have resources yet? Don't think we've gotten the resources yet. We should be getting some resources from our colonies around though, so we'll be able to start building stuff in here, especially if we could get a shipyard in Macau. That'd be nice, just so that we could repair the ships there and so forth, and maybe retool some of the smaller ships at least. We also have now 3 civilian mining colonies, although we may have had this from the start of the year already. But yeah, all in all there's 8 civilian mining complexes, which is not bad. Well, it's certainly not the least that we know of. We haven't done a huge amount of new colonies other than the one in Brazil. We'll probably look into starting a bit more colonies at some point, although we might also look into capturing Buenos Aires from the Spanish, mostly because it didn't seem to have a huge garrison there. So we're currently building a bit more troops in both Rio and Belém, And hopefully we can amass a large enough army so that we could then capture it for ourselves. Because that would be nice, that would be denying the Spanish a bit more access to the South Atlantic, for example. And it would give us yet another colony that would be able to feed into our war machine, so to speak. In terms of fleet movements, we don't really have anything planned right now. We do have a fair bit of ships in Lisbon, in Gulf of Cadiz, and then we have a little bit of ships in North Atlantic in Cape Verde, which actually reminds me, we should probably bring those ships back to Lisbon for overhaul, and we can send in some other new ships to North Atlantic instead. And then of course in Brazil and Argentina we have a fair bit of ships there. Most of our ships are currently in Argentina since we did the raid on Buenos Aires. And then we have a little bit of ships in Africa as well, but not too much. And then of course in Macau we are gathering up some fleets to maybe attack Philippines, but currently we don't have the vertical controls, so that is complicating things a little bit, I'd say. In terms of money, we're actually doing pretty decent. I mean, we are getting a few hundred per month right now, which is not bad. Currently in positive still, so that's going to be pretty good, which means that we'll be getting probably more food with our trade income. Our shipping line currently has 2 colon ships and 3 freighters, and one of the colon ships, I believe, may be actually brand new. If we have a look at the history, yes, it is indeed brand new, so that's that means that the shipping line has expanded rather recently, so it's probably going to take at least better part of the year before they expand again. Although in South America we've been doing a lot of trading by the looks of it, so it is getting a lot of cash. So it might be expanding a bit more sooner than I thought. But all in all, other than the raid to Buenos Aires, we've been rather on the defensive for the time being. We're just waiting what's going to happen in the war, because our fleets in Lisbon are rather limited in capability, or if we start doing stuff with this fleet, it's very likely that the Spanish and the French will attack us. So we do need to keep a bit of a defensive stance here, just make sure that the enemy doesn't attack us. It's probably going to be more about the Dutch and the British to initiate any larger scale attacks. We can do a little bit of raids and stuff like that. Like, we could potentially go and raid Chile, although getting there is going to be a challenge. It's going to take a long while, but we can certainly think about something there, or maybe finally set up a colony in South Atlantic. Let's actually have a quick look. We have surveyed a tiny bit of South Atlantic, so there might already be something that we could colonize there, but there's no guarantee of it right now, so we'll think about that later. But eventually we do want to increase our influence around the South Atlantic region. Like, we already have some holdings in Africa and Argentina, Brazil and all that. And if we could get a colony in the zone itself, that'd be nice. But for the most part, we're just expanding our fleet, upgrading some of the ships there, and waiting to see what happens. But anyway, that's about it for this episode, so make sure to check out Druzhnik's channel, link is down below in the description. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye bye.